Hi everybody, we're going to do lesson 8-3 today, solving quadratic equations, S, when it's not set equal to 0, okay, so not equal to 0. I wrote some steps over to the right. You can copy them if you want, or I'm going to keep them up. And please write down the first equation and hit pause, and when you're done writing everything down, come back. Okay, here we go. 4h squared equals 25. I know that's a quadratic equation, and the reason I know that is because it has this h squared here, okay? So normally when we're trying to solve an equation, we're trying to get the variable alone. There's a big difference here. And the big difference is we're not trying to get h alone at this point. We're trying to make the equation equal to 0. So I have 4h squared equal to 25. Well, that's not equal to 0, so I have to get it so it's equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 25 on both sides of the equation, subtraction property of equality. On the right side, I have 25 minus 25. Well, that's 0. And that's an equal sign. So now we have something equal to 0. Well, what is equal to 0? 4h squared minus 25. So really what's happening there is we're taking something that's written horizontally and we're writing it vertically. Nope. We're taking something that's written vertically and we're writing it horizontally. They have no like terms, so you can't just, add them together or combine like terms. Okay, so now this has two terms, this quadratic. That means we either are going to do GCF or difference of perfect squares. Well, there is no GCF here. 4 doesn't go into 25. 2 goes into 4, but it doesn't go into 25. So it's not GCF. That means it's difference of perfect squares. So look at the first term here. It's 4. Square root of 4 is 2, so that's a perfect square. H squared, the square root of h squared is h, so that's a perfect square. And 25, the square root of 25 is 5, so that's a perfect square. So we have, and we have subtraction, the difference of perfect squares. Okay, that means we double bubble. And remember, it's an equation now, so we're setting it equal to 0. We're going to take the square root of 4h squared, which is 2h, and 2h. Okay, 2h times 2h is 4h squared. We're going to have a plus and a minus, because we always do when it's difference of perfect squares. And then the square root of 25 is 5, so 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, next step. I realize I'm going fast, so if you need to pause and copy things down, that's fine. Okay, we're going to set each factor equal to 0. Okay, we have 2h plus 5 equals 0, 2h minus 5 equals 0. Now we're going to solve each, what I call the little equations. So we started with one bigger equation, and now we have these two little ones. So subtract 5, whoopsie, subtract 5 on both sides, and you get 2h equals negative 5. So now we're trying to get the h alone, by the way. We divide by 2 on both sides, and we get h equals negative 2.5. Okay, that's one of your solutions. We have to solve for the other little equation. So we add 5 to both sides, and we get 2h equals 5. Divide by 2 to get h alone, and we get h equals 2.5. You may see it written as h equals squiggly brackets negative 2.5 comma 2.5. Those are your two solutions. There are two different solutions, therefore there's two solutions. Okay, hit pause and write down the second example. Okay, here we go. So first step, when you have a quadratic equation, meaning an equation where the 2 is the largest exponent. First thing we're going to do is set the equation equal to 0. We are not trying to get x alone yet. So we're going to subtract 14x from both sides. All right. When we do that on the right side, we get a 0. When we do it on the left side, we're going to take what was written vertically and we're just going to write it horizontally. When we write it horizontally, it's easy to see. They're not like terms. We can't combine them. We have two terms here. All right, two terms means we could either have GCF or difference of perfect squares. We always want to check for GCF first. And in this case, I see a 2, which goes into 14. They're both even numbers. I also see that they both have at least one x. That means my GCF equals 2x. I'm going to divide by 2x everywhere. That means 2x comes on the outside of one set of parentheses, which is equal to 0. What goes in the parentheses is x minus 7. Okay? Okay, now, next step, set each factor equal to 0. Make a line. 2x is a factor and x minus 7 is a factor. Set 2x equal to 0 and set x minus 7 equal to 0. Next step, solve each little equation. Well, when we divide by 2 on both sides for the little tiny equation here, we get x equals, well, 0 divided by 2 is 0. And on the right side, we're going to have to add 7 to both sides. And we are going to get x equals 7. We have two solutions here. Our two solutions are 0 and 7. That means if I substituted either a 0 or a 7 into the original equation, both of those would check. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to put the next problem up. Okay, hit pause, write down number 3, question number 3, or problem number 3. Okay, so I'm going to go through our steps. It is a quadratic equation because you have an x squared there. All right, that means we have to follow these 4 steps. Set the equation equal to 0. That means we're going to add 2 to both sides of this equation. When I add 2 to the right side, well, opposites make a 0. So therefore, we have something that's going to equal 0. That was the first step. We have to bring down all this stuff and write it horizontally. And when you write it horizontally, you can see we can't combine like terms. There are no like terms. But we do have to do the next step, which is factor. First thing you want to look at when you have 3 terms is there a GCF? So anytime you're factoring, you're going to always look for a GCF first. And in this case, I see 2, 4, and 2. That means everything's divisible by 2. Meaning my GCF is a 2. And a 2 goes on the outside of a set of parentheses. And what's left over after I do the division is x squared plus 2x plus 1. That's plus 1. Okay? All right, now, if you notice this, it says factor left side completely. Oh, now I just erased that. So that means I have to look within the parentheses. I might have to factor twice. Well, I have a trinomial here now. I've already done GCF, so now I'm going to see if my X method works. So I'm going to put the last number in the top and the middle number in the the bottom. And I'm going to find factors of 1. 1 times 1 is 1. That add to be 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. So 1 and 1. I'm going to bring down the 2. And then I am going to double bubble. And I'm going to have an x plus 1, x plus 1. We're going to set each factor equal to 0. We have 3 factors here. We have a 2. 2 equals 0. Well, does 2 equal 0? No, that's not a true statement. Therefore, there's no solution for that piece of this equation. But we have 2 more factors. We have x plus 1, which we can set equal to 0, and we have x plus 1, which we could set equal to 0. Okay, we're going to solve each of these. Subtract 1 from each side, we get x equals negative 1. Going to get the same thing on this side. X equals negative 1. Okay, what's our solution, or how many solutions do we have? Well, this solution, x equals negative 1 and x equals negative 1, they're the same thing. So how many solutions do we have? 1, and it's x equals -1. Squiggly brackets. All right. Okay, I'm going to put the next question up. Okay, hit pause, write this problem down. Number 4, 5x squared equals 13x minus 6. Okay, we have to follow these steps, set the equation equal to 0. Now, some people might want to move this 5x squared to the right because you're only moving one thing then, but you want your coefficient of x to be positive. So we have a positive 5 there. We don't want to mess with that, so leave it there. Instead, we're going to take the opposite of 13x, which is negative 13x, and if you add those together, you get a 0. But look at this, you'd have a negative 6 coming down, excuse me. What if we just added the opposite of both of them at the same time? 13x minus 13x is 0, and this is negative 6 plus 6, which is 0. That means we have the whole thing equal to 0. That means we have to do the same thing on the right side. Okay? We have to I wrote that wrong. We have to bring down that minus 13x. What we do to one side, we do to the other. We are going to write the left side horizontally. So 5x squared minus 13x plus 6. Okay? Well, now we're going to factor completely. First thing we look for is GCF. There is no GCF here. Okay, we'll cut to the chase. 5 doesn't go into 13 is a prime number. You're not going to have a GCF. There's not an x in the last term, so you can't take an x out. Next kind of factoring that we're going to have to do then is that eyeglass theory with the x. So it's 5 times 6 goes into the top of the x, which is 30, and the bottom is a negative 13. Real quick, 10 times 3 equals 30. 10 plus 3 equals 13. We want a negative 13. That means we just change the signs. Positive becomes negative, negative becomes positive. Okay? We have to rewrite this where we bring down the 5x squared and the 6. Then we're going to write minus 10x and minus 3x. And that's plus 6. Then we do factoring completely. So we group the two terms and two terms. We GCF the first one, so that's a 5x that's going to come out of there. Everybody see that? If I divide by 5x everywhere, what I'm left with is an x minus 2. On the next one, I'm going to take out a negative 3. If I divide by negative 3 everywhere, what I'm going to have next left is x minus 2 again, okay? Equals 0. Oops, I forgot an equals 0 then. It is an equation. Our factors here are going to be x minus 2 and 5x minus 3. Those equal 0. We split them into two problems. X minus 2 equals 0. 5x minus 3 equals 0. This guy is going to be x equals 2. We're adding 2 to both sides. And this guy here, we're going to add 3. And you get 5x equals 3. And then you divide by 5 on both sides. And you get x equals 3/5. There are two solutions. The first one is 3/5. And the second one is 2. And that's that. Okay, so write these 4 problems down. Leave yourself plenty of space though, okay? And hit pause, work on them. When you come back, the answers will be there. Do not copy my answers. Okay, here are the answers. It's a little messy. I'm trying to squeeze a lot in while I keep the steps up. But that's it. So check your work, and then you're done for the week, because I'm only giving you 3 this week. This was a big one. All right, hey, have a great day. Have a good weekend.